Good morning, everyone. This is Ravekel. We are playing Super Mario Brothers. That's technically the third time. I wanted to do something a little different, so we're gonna go ahead and do. We're gonna do the version that was released as part of Super Mario All Stars. I figure going through and playing the Super Mario All-Stars versions of these games could be a fun little thing. They're mostly the same. The physics even feel very much the same. So they're pretty clean translations. But a little bit of extra flavor added, and I will probably be doing Lost Levels as part of this as well. Just as something I've done before, but that will be a little bit different as well. I haven't been posting a lot of videos recently, and pretty straightforward reason for that. I'm tired. A lot. And between my computers still not working well and a lot of the stuff going on in the world, I just haven't had the energy to deal with some of the stuff, or to deal with recording. I haven't felt like recording. I've had just a lot of dead time and a lot of more recharge time than normal. So my recording sessions have been few and far between. Part of that's because there's just so much I can't record right now that I want to. I have 3 or 4 runs recently that I've stopped in the middle of because of my computer crashing out, or because of my computer running poorly and not being able to get good, clean recordings. So I figured I've been trying to stick to emulators. I did Earthbound, which was a pretty solid project. And I've had a few other thoughts as far as what I could run next. But a lot of them have been kind of daunting projects. Like, none of them are too big, but some of them are either slightly challenging gameplay-wise, or games I'm not as familiar with, or just long RPGs. And while I am totally okay with any of those individually, convincing myself right now that that's where I want to be has just been challenging. I thought there was a 1 up there. Oh well. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been at. My computer parts are supposed to arrive in the next week or so then I'll be building my new computer and getting software installed. I may be looking at getting a new recording software as well. And then I'll be able to do things like Hades and Springboard mechanics are really weird in this. Oh well. Yeah. Hades is on my list. Finishing Fallout 4 is high on my list. Ori is probably going to be top of my list. I've thought about some plans to revisit some older games, specifically ones from really early on that I don't necessarily think got a fair shot or that I stopped in the middle of. And part of the thought process there is also that I'd like to get copies that are a little bit better sound quality, because it was not immediately after I started that... Basically, most of my recordings at this point are on this microphone setup, which isn't amazing, but is good. My original videos were all done on a headset, and there's some of them that actually just have bad sound also on top of headset. Like, either the sound just didn't record or something along those lines. So I've thought about going back and redoing ActRaiser with that in mind. Or possibly revisiting Soul Blazer and also the DuckTales remastered game. Partially because the game kept crashing out before I got through the end, and partially because the sound on it is still from the old recording, so it's kind of a twofer. Also because DuckTales is a fun game. There's a lot of good games out there, and I don't want to just start repeating too much. But especially if I end up getting new sound equipment, which is on my list as well, that'll be a good excuse to go back and redo some of those with a significantly higher quality sound input. So yeah, that's kind of my upcoming plan as far as I'm concerned right now. I do have a few other big new games coming out. One of the big things is Persona just released on Steam. So I'm thinking once I've got a computer that can run it, Persona 4 could be a really fun thing to run. I'm planning on grabbing a capture card once the cost goes down a little bit again. And that will allow me to play Switch games. I've thought about doing Mario Maker. So I've actually started collecting some Mario Maker ideas, levels that I'd like to play, which I think would be a good good kind of viewer participation thing as well, and people can submit levels to play. I know there's a couple people whose levels I have on my list already that would be people who watch some of my videos. Oop. That was really bad. Clearly, talking about Mario Maker made me think about the wrong physics. That must be it. The other thing that I was thinking with Mario Maker is that it would be fun to... I would enjoy playing my own levels through just as kind of a demonstration to explain kind of the way I designed them. I don't make anything that's super complicated. I really would like to, but I've never really put the time into figuring out how all the contraptions work. I get ideas and then I get distracted. Sometimes I'm too much of a perfectionist in that regard. So yeah, Mario Maker, Pokemon. I've got a plan. The kind of offhand, the easiest system that I was thinking would be Switch, but if I have an HDMI input, I'd be able to do a lot of systems, and I definitely would also, on the road, be able to look at doing, like if I can get the right connectors and stuff, I might be able to do actual NES, SNES inputs. I've also looked at how they do, Nintendo 3DS, because 3DS does not have a video output on it, and the company that there was a company that was doing custom video output for those for people to stream. Really? That was really dumb. I don't remember which one it is. I could have sworn there was a mushroom somewhere in there. I know there's one coming up. But yeah, so I've looked into 3DS. It's doable, but it requires you to jailbreak the system, and it actually streams over wireless, so I'm not sure what that would be for quality. I'd assume it'd be good enough if you had a clean signal. So that was kind of another thought I was having, was there's a couple 3DS games, or DS games in particular, that I've kind of wanted to do and have not. That being the Etrian Odyssey games, which are among some of my favorites. And again, Pokemon would be a fun one to throw in. Or having more options for... I hate that jump. Having more options for Pokemon games is more what I was thinking. First Life Lost, though. And this is an area of the game I don't do very often, given that it's, you know, after the warp zone. So yeah, there's a lot of other... I mean, honestly, the DS and 3DS are among my favorite systems, like, period. There's a lot of fun games for those, and I would really like to do... Or I could look at doing the Persona Q games and Etrian Odyssey as kind of the dungeon... very grindy dungeon crawls. My concern there would be similar to my concern with doing any more Nipponichi games after the disaster that was the end of Disgaea. I've definitely been considering going back to a Nippon Ichi game because I love Phantom Brave, but grindy RPGs don't seem to be the best at this, or for this. I do think that Etrian Odyssey would have a little bit better luck with that, because I don't have an army to grind up. You can usually get by with just one party, or possibly with one exception to that. Oh, I don't remember this entirely, but I think it's this. Yeah. Eh. Yeah, Etrian Odyssey is one of my favorite game series, and it's a series I don't think a lot of people have played, which is kind of my thought behind it. I guess the other ones, I've heard that the DS versions of the Dragon Quest games are really good, and I figured that would be a fun way to do Dragon Quest as well. Particularly, I know like Dragon Quest VII is a really good game, but is also like very long. I could have sworn there was a hidden block there with a mushroom. Oh well. But also, games like Dragon Quest V, which is a really good game. The RPG podcast that I enjoy listening to, Dragon Quest V is one of their favorite games, period. Like, collectively. So, it's been on my list to play for a while, and I think that'd be fun. The other RPG that I've been looking at, which is not actually related to DS, is Mother 3. I'm kind of trying to balance out the best way to handle Mother 3, because I was specifically told to do a blind playthrough, which I'm sure I can do. I mean, it's an RPG. You're generally not going to get stuck horribly, and you're generally going to be able to... I don't remember this. Yeah, generally, I should be able to get through it without getting stuck horribly, you know, reading context clues and such, but there's something... I feel like when I have my research, I have things to talk about, and I have things to contribute. Like, for some games, I'm okay with playing it blind because it gives me... It's something that's new to me and that I can talk about the structure of the game itself. Particularly stuff like the Metroidvanias, because I have a kind of compare-contrast at this point going. You know, I mean, even stuff like the Mario ROM hacks or stuff like that. But a lot of the other games that I play, I do some sort of prerequisite preparation for it. You know, Mega Man, I figure out the boss order, I do my research, and typically I actually watch some runs of people playing the game ahead of time. Watch some speed runs or watch some sometimes just some regular playthroughs to figure out like strategies for beating the bosses and stuff like that. Now, Mega Man, I'm a little bit more confident with, like, because I've played a lot of those, and I mean, just getting boss order is not like a huge deal. RPGs, like Final Fantasy is one of my Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger are among the games I've played the most in my life. Besides Link to the Past at this point, which kind of is heads and tails above as far as how many times I've played it compared to everything else. That's only if you count the randomizer. But for all of those, part of what's been interesting to me has been I learned so much in the course of the research. Now, Mother 3, I've played through once, and I do not remember well. So, I feel like I'm going to be doing a blind playthrough, but I don't know much about the game, so it would very much be reactive, which I'm less comfortable with. So, I'm keeping it high on my list. I think it'd be fun. And I think the fact that I think it would be fun is good. But again, it seems like more of an investment, and part of what I'm concerned with is that if I try to play it when I'm not in a good mental state for what is probably going to be a relatively long project with a bit of a time investment that I'm not familiar with, there's a decent chance that it'll go the way of Seiken Densetsu 3. Where I get hyped up and then realize that it's really hard to actually talk. Now, there's enough going on in Mother games that I think I can figure out stuff to talk about. But again, I thought that about Seiken Densetsu 3 and ended up really struggling because it kind of is a bit slow-paced and a little bit repetitive at times. And it's still a really awesome game, and I love some of the stuff in it. But it was really hard to talk about, and that's why I ended up not finishing it. Barely starting it. So, yeah. A lot of the games that I don't start, it's because I'm afraid I won't finish it. So I want to make sure I'm actually really excited for it first. Like, I've thought about starting Mega Man X2 a couple times here. Because Mega Man is, again, one of my favorite game series. It's really easy for me to jump into. Or honestly, one of the bigger ones is Super Metroid. Like, that's been on my list for a long time, and I'm terrified to start it because I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to finish it. It's a game that I have, despite all the Metroidvanias I play, I've only actually played Super Metroid all the way through once, and I've only played Castlevania Symphony of the Night all the way through once. I've played both of them more than that. That was really dumb. I knew I wasn't going to make that jump as soon as I started, but going back to small isn't that big of a deal. There we go. great. Part of me with that jump is like, I should be more patient, take my time. And then the other part of me is like, no, you know how to do this. This is a really straightforward jump that you know how to do. You've done it a million times before, and you should just do it. World 7's the least familiar area to me out of all of the Mario, probably almost all of Mario, like, of the NES Marios. That was just a really bad jump. I might need to get some more lives at some point here. Usually I either don't make it this far or use a warp zone, so I feel like, okay, it's just a coin block. I knew one of those blocks was something. I could not remember what. Yeah, that should let me get my mushroom back at least. It's usually one of the ends. It's not in this one. Okay. That's unfortunate. We get to go through Hammer Bros with Small. There's a few other platformers I've considered going back to, like Donkey Kong Country. I have no idea why that game is so hard to me right now. Because it is a game I played the crap out of as a kid. And I don't ever remember it being that hard. And, like, that's one where I didn't, like, abandon it. That one and Yoshi's Island, both. Like, I didn't abandon them because I was because I wasn't, like, enjoying them or not able to talk about them. I abandoned them because I was getting stuck on platforming sections. And I think it's probably just the fact that they're so different, and possibly the fact that I'm not as used to the controls or the physics as I could be. But I don't know. It's weird. Could also be the fact that the timing is weird. One thing I've considered with a lot of the platforming games that especially the ones I'm very familiar with, is that playing on an LCD with a USB controller is going to have slightly different timing than a CRT that I was used to. I don't know. Like, maybe there's muscle memory from that's just off as far as timing goes. Maybe it's because I'm, 20 years older and my reflexes aren't as good for stuff. But then there's other games that I pick up and it's like they're not any different. He said as he ran into a Koopa Troopa. The good news is I believe I should be able to continue this one rather than the way that the NES one does continues. So yeah, that's kind of my ongoing state of the stream. I have a couple FF4 runs that I've got the ROMs for. I've thought about doing some more Zelda runs because I've been watching a lot of videos for it recently, but I've done like 30 of each of those. Like, I promise, I feel like I have done as much of those as I'm going to for now. I may do a couple every once in a while. Let's see, it's middle here, top. Yeah. I've looked at some of the other randomizers, and I really don't feel like there's as much going for them. I've looked at the FF6 randomizer and the Mario RPG randomizer, and those are the two closest to ones that I would think I would enjoy. Both of them are very similar to the way that the FF4 randomizer is structured, where you just immediately get access to the full world, and your goal is to go around and create loot locations, beat bosses that are in specific locations. In Final Fantasy, in FF6, you unlock additional areas by unlocking characters, which makes sense because that game has a bazillion characters, and each of them is tied to certain story events. So, like, if you get Mog, you can go get Umaro and do certain things in Narshe. If you get Terra, you can do certain other sections. It's neat. It looks neat. It just doesn't look like there's actually much to it as far as the... Like, it seems like it's one of those that is a lot better when it's fully randomized and you're doing it for the sake of randomness, but it doesn't feel as much like there's as much variety to it, which, to an extent, I've heard that about FF4 as a complaint as well. And I don't feel like FF4 is comparatively to certain other things, but I feel like Zelda is definitely the top as far as puzzle solving goes. Where it's very much a puzzle where you figure out how to get from one point to the other and use your tools. The Earthbound randomizer is actually really weird, and they actually compare it to the Ancient Cave, which was intriguing to me, obviously. The way it works in the Earthbound randomizer is you get a random series of rooms that make up what they call a floor. So, and it's kind of an entrance randomizer. So you'll generally get like one big area, like you might get like Onett, and each of the doors in Onett, in this case, don't actually lead to where they should. So you go through and have, very similar to Ancient Cave, where the enemies get harder as you go down, and the your goal in it is to find key items that let you progress through different obstacles, and to I think you can recruit characters, I can't remember offhand, and then also find the correct door to go down to the next, basically you have to find the sanctums and progress down. Now, that one seemed intriguing as a concept, but that last playthrough of Earthbound is the second time that I've actually played through the game in its entirety. And that makes me less confident in playing a randomized version of it, especially one that is non-linear like that, where you don't actually know where you're going. You just have to know the maps well enough to know where all you have is options. Now, it's not super complicated, so I think I might be able to handle it, but it's a very different randomizer. I'd be very curious about it. But it is like, it isn't a randomizer in the, like, hey, solve a puzzle sense. It is a, you have to have, you're basically either doing some light exploration and kind of a tedious process, or you are very familiar with the game and the randomizer and able to utilize the randomized mechanics to your advantage. And quite frankly, I tried watching one of the tournaments for it, and I couldn't get into it the same way I was with, oh, he just did a big jump. I couldn't get into it the same way I had with the other randomizers. Mario RPG randomizer was the one that was most intriguing to me out of the three. And the main reason that it intrigued me was because it had this aspect to it of, oh, this is bad. I know that I can get through these sections better, and I am totally just botching. So yeah, Mario RPG randomizer is very, it honestly feels the most like FF4 out of them. It's, you know, go through an area, you get to unlock the next area. Unlike okay, we get to start over at 8-1. Unlike the other, unlike FF4, it doesn't have random encounters turned off, if I'm remembering correctly. And the reason for that is pretty obvious if you're familiar with Mario RPG. It's because you can dodge encounters already. And that's actually the main reason that I didn't really super get into it. The other neat thing was that they did stuff that like randomized which characters got which powers, which actually was really neat in that game because of how the stat progressions work. So it randomized both equipment for which character can use it and skills. So you ended up with things like Bowser's like Toxic Cloud skill, which is pretty much worthless because Bowser's special stat is so bad, being usable if you put it on somebody like or if you end up with it on somebody like Mario or Peach, and if you know the elemental weaknesses for all the bosses and enemies. And there's a lot of it that was, unfortunately, like, to do it efficiently came down to stuff like, or the same stuff as the regular game, which is, can you do super jumps? So that's kind of was the nail in the coffin for me with that, is that there are randomized items put behind the, or it's, I don't think it's key items, I think it was just equipment put behind the super suit and the Troopa pin, or not Troopa pin, what is it, super suit and attack scarf, I think. Screwed that up. And I think that's far enough that it's gonna... Oh, nope, I get to start at the beginning, which means I get the 1-up again. That's the big thing with this level, is if you screw up, you want to get the 1-up again, and you can die as much as you need to, unlike the other levels. Okay, so yeah, it was a neat randomizer. I liked the idea of it. I actually enjoyed watching that one a little bit more. I also really love watching the Mario RPG speedruns, so that makes sense. But it really came down to a lot of watching it, like, with Zelda, even... Honestly, part of the reason I stopped being as interested in the Zelda ones is because it's become a speedrunning event rather than a more casual event. Most of the people that play in the tournaments are these top-end speedrunners, so I don't feel like I'm actually playing the game, whereas before I was like, oh hey, there's people who are getting close to my times that are playing this regularly. Like, I wasn't making the top times or anything like that, but at least in the early stages of the bracket, I felt like I was able to, you know, compete. And now I feel like I have to learn speedrun tricks to do it. And FF4 is game knowledge. I can do that. It's not speedrun tricks. I can do most of the stuff that those same people do in FF4. They can menu faster and make slightly better decisions on when to, stop doing what they're doing. Like when to stop opening chests and stuff like that. They have slightly better game knowledge and slightly better efficiency with some of the tricks than me. Yes, they're going to make a lot better time, but I don't feel like I'm in a whole different weight class compared to, like, Zelda, where it's like, everybody playing can do dark rooms, everybody playing can do bomb jumps, and those are the big two. To the point where they, you know, rearranged the logic for Lamp because of that. And so now I have to play on basic. Which is fine, but it's silly. I hate this jump. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on a lot of the randomizers. It basically just comes down to I've done them a lot. And I don't feel like I'm doing new things or having things to talk about with them. It's not engaging and exciting to me the way it was. So maybe I'll try some more, maybe if they're doing new stuff. And basically it's gonna just keep coming down to when my friends are doing them, I will play them, and I may or may not record them. Which I think is reasonable. That was really unfortunate. Okay, let's see if we can be smart with this. And by smart, I mean not die. Basically 2 more threats. That was really weird timing. Boom. That was actually much better than my last than the last runs that I did. Those first two I recorded. I feel like, at least. I'm not doing a more difficult quest, thanks though. So yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good state of the stream, state of the channel. Like I said, we'll see where things are at once I actually get my new computer and I'm able to do things that I'm a little more excited about and more confident with. Right now, a lot of it for me just comes down to, I mean, really, it really just comes down to, times are tough. You know, I mean, the world is kind of a mess right now. If you're watching this way in the future for some reason, it is currently June 2020, so we are in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are in the midst of the substantial Black Lives Matter protests. There is a lot going on. I have had a lot going on just because of COVID-19 as far as my work and my family life and my relationships and everything else. So yeah, there's just a lot going on. I think being tired is kind of been a consistent trait, and part of me, you know, a lot of times streaming is kind of that for me, but I haven't even been able to, and I think part of it's because I haven't been playing the games that I'm super excited about because my computer's been having problems, so I don't want to add more stress on top of it, I guess. I don't know. But someday we'll get back to to doing what we're gonna do. I'm literally waiting on a motherboard. It ended up taking an extra month to ship past everything else. I don't have my capture card yet because they were about 3 times the price that they were listed as. So I'm gonna see if I can seek one out. I'm excited about this new computer. I'm excited about the future and things kind of, even if the whole ordeal of this pandemic and these protests are not over, I'm looking forward to learning more, getting more resolution, not feeling so angry all the time. Maybe people will start learning about, you know, the fact that, you know, other people's health matters and stop being so unsympathetic in both cases. But for now, we have Mario. I've kind of used Mario 1 as a state of my stream in the past. I've done it on anniversaries and stuff. And this kind of ended up... I've been trying to stream something for like the last week or two, and I just haven't had the energy, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try playing Mario 1 and just talking and seeing what happens. So, hopefully it was entertaining for you still. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you're somebody who enjoys my streams, I'm sure you'd be happy to know what's going on. Yeah. So with that, if you enjoyed this, please give me a like and subscribe. Check out the other content on my channel. I have 2 other videos of me talking about stuff and playing Mario. I have lots of other videos of me playing Mario. I have Mega Man, I have Shovel Knight and DuckTales and all kinds of fun platformers. I have lots of RPGs that I talked about. Some finished, some not. There's lots of content here, and if you enjoy it, check out some more. There's hopefully going to be more coming. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments. I love game suggestions. I love suggestions about the way that I structure these, what you want to hear more about. What do you want me to talk about? If you have questions. I love, especially like when I have games that I can just that I don't have a lot to say. Having things to talk about from you is something that helps me stay focused in those and have some, not just have dead silence and repetition. So yeah, as always, have a good one. Stay safe. And don't forget that we're all in this together. Try to show some empathy for your fellow human being. Have a good one.